It's not easy to bring back a decades-old game and turn it into a title that for all practical reasons feels brand new, but that's exactly what Age of Mythology Definitive Edition does. The Age of Empires series has never been an obsession of mine, partially because I tend to enjoy a somewhat grander and deeper scale of kingdom management than what this series offers, but that doesn't mean I can appreciate what's here. The series is known for its addictive RTS mechanics set in various historical time periods and its loyal and intense multiplayer community where min-maxing and understanding how to best utilize your culture is vital to gain an edge, especially against more sweaty opponents. Of course, the Age series is also known for its extensive single-player campaigns and skirmish battles, where I'd say it's usually smart to start playing if you're new. Age of Mythology is the latest and for all intents and purposes, last definitive edition version of the Age games, and in my opinion, arguably also the best, which is what we're going to talk about in this video. And if you find yourself liking my style, it would be awesome if you left a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you're aiming to pick up any of the Age games, other strategy games, or any other titles in any other genres, then check out channel partner Instant Gaming, where you'll find incredible sales and discounts practically all the time for every platform. I used to service myself and love it, so use my link below for some awesome discounts. And now, back to the video. Age of Mythology distinguishes itself from the rest of the Age series by being the only one taking place in mythological tales, making use of historical civilizations, sure, like the Greeks, Egyptians, and the Vikings, but adding their gods and creatures into the mix and making them the focal point. As opposed to the other Age games where we play out mostly historical set pieces, then, Mythology loosens the script a little, and has us play around with powerful forces that certainly outmatch anything the other games have to offer. I mean, it's not every day we see a flying Pegasus, terrifying Davy Jones sea monsters, or massive titans roaming the earth. But you know, this is the stuff Age of Mythology offers on a daily basis. And the best part? It's just good old fun. Thing is, as someone whose first strategy game experiences happened in meetings with Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth and Star Wars Empire at War, I'm personally much more inclined to the old school RTS games where you mix the ordinary with the extraordinary, meaning mixing up regular soldier units like elven archers or soldiers of Rohan and Gondor with heroes like Gandalf and Aragorn, both of whom offered various powers that could turn the tide of battle. And I think this is why Age of Mythology resonates with me in a way the other Age games do not in the same way, because here we see the return of this dynamic of the tried and true Age of Empires armies, but mixed in with powerful heroes and creatures of myth, who indeed can turn the tide of every game. This doesn't just make Age of Mythology feel more dynamic and unpredictable, but I'd say it makes it more fun and colorful too. Indeed, something I find to be something of a chore in these Age games is controlling a bunch of regular units at the same time, since I find that the systems for controlling them in a structured way are quite limited. But when you suddenly add in more powerful stuff into the mix, keeping control of every little person isn't as important anymore. Don't get me wrong, it's still vital to make use of the population you have and the soldiers you have recruited. But if you play your cards right, you'll also find that the mythological units are often much better, and controlling a few larger or more visible units is suddenly a lot easier to manage than dozens of smaller indistinguishable ones. The spectacle of summoning a titan through a massive portal is thrilling, especially when you're doing your best to actually build that portal, and seeing them roam the earth and Hulk smash every building to pieces in seconds is quite the power trip. In terms of those special units, upgrading town centers and accomplishing certain goals also at times yields powerful creatures. Perhaps you'll get a few crows who can scout the lands for you, or some Anubis monsters, but whom you of course must pay attention to lest they be shot down in their merry way. As you upgrade your town centers, you'll get access to new legendary figures, and through traveling through the eras, you'll also get to choose different powers from different gods, based on which you think will suit you best. Just like in other similar games, throughout the match you'll also acquire powers that may be used independently of characters, powers that will recharge over time, but require the special favor resource to actually use. These can be what you'd normally think of as regular superpowers, like summoning Zeus Lightning, but one that shocked me was the Viking ability of instantly turning every single one of your workers into certified legendary heroes of Ragnarok, a power received from choosing Baldur during an age transition. Now this can of course provide you with a mighty army that can overwhelm your enemies or be super useful during a desperate defense. But then there's also that little matter of turning literally every one of your workers and dwarves into soldiers, so you will have to pretty much rebuild your economy if you choose to use it. Oh, and other than the different gods, the different powers, the different legendary creatures you'll be summoning and using to wage war, and of course other than the unique faction designs in terms of architecture, each faction's internal mechanics also work differently, albeit slightly. Because while playing Playing as the Greeks, for example, mostly feels like playing as regular age factions in terms of workers, where the workers can pretty much do everything you ask them to do. The Vikings work differently. Here, workers excel at, say, farming and chopping trees, but are not as good at mining. That's where the dwarves come in, who function much like workers but suck at farming, yet excel at gold mining, which is the game telling you to specialize where your workers are going. This is actually a really cool system that I feel Age could utilize more of in its other games, and I like the fact that a bit more thinking goes into where to place who. Similarly, while the Greeks use storehouses for food and other resources, the Viking use either town centers or mobile ox carts as storage, which is an interesting change of pace. Egyptians on their part are more like the Greeks in this sense, but can use monuments to enhance the performance of the workers around it, and may, for example, use godly powers to turn their pharaohs into mythological beasts. Of course, Age of Mythology is just as much about building your kingdom as ever, so gathering resources and participating in the arms race is vital. You're going to always want to focus on getting as much food, gold, and wood as possible, and of course favor too this time around. But it obviously does all lead up to you trying to vanquish those enemies of yours. And while Mythology does allow for some unique sneak attacks, like when the Vikings summon the Frost and you're suddenly dealing with ice wolves right in your base, gathering a large army and setting off is usually the way to go about things. Personally, I think it's the most fun to wage war on a map with oceans on it, because I love the immersion of transporting troops and needing to have a powerful navy. But this of course means two things. You need a navy that can safely transport your army across the waters, and your army itself needs to be of sufficient strength to deal some damage. Because you don't want to end up like me playing as Egypt here, sending off a bunch of awesome elephants, chariots, and other monstrosities, only to have them kind of die off at the beach. No, you're going to want to prepare for real, overwhelm the enemy once you first decide to begin that war of yours. Because as always, you don't necessarily know what the enemy has in store for you, so always make sure to come prepared when you hit that attack button. One thing I've so far managed to stay clear of, but which we definitely need to talk about, are those revamped visuals, because they are gorgeous. From the unimodels who look better than those in even Age of Empires 4, to the terrain and especially those waters which just look so succulent, to the colors and the general shine and vibrant look of things, Age of Mythology is as beautiful as anyone could have hoped for it to be. If you didn't know better, it would be impossible to believe that this was a definitive edition and not a true sequel, especially in terms of how Age games generally look. That's all to say that I love how Mythology looks, but in terms of how the gameplay itself works, I think there is a few things we can talk about here. First of all, it's a well-established fact that the general gameplay of the Age series is going to stay basically identical to the other games, unless we're talking about 3, I guess, but it's still fairly similar. And this is what I assume the fans of the series want for the most part, and it's perfectly fair to expect a near one-for-one version of the original game, of course, since this is just a remake and not a full-blown sequel. But there are a few things I would have liked to see improved here, as with the management of workers. Because you know, when you suddenly have dozens of available workers late in the game, it would be neat to be able to select a bunch of them at the same time, drag to have them build farms, and then just have each of them build their individual farms and work them, instead of having to hold shift and then click once per farm you want built. I'd also like more options in terms of formations and tactics for soldiers, since now, the options we have do appear quite limited. I think a few quality of life improvements like these would have helped make Age of Mythology feel just as modern as it looks, even though of course, the Age games never truly feel modern per se, as they in many ways do retain the exact same gameplay design as they did 20 years ago, for better or worse. What I like about the Age games, and Mythology is no different, is that they are essentially covering every base when it comes to what players could want out of their games as they are. The campaigns offers varied and multiple storylines with several of the in-game factions, and allows for a narrative single-player experience in the traditional sense. We then have the offline skirmish matches versus the AI, where it's fun to train your skills and just vibe. And of course the multiplayer section, where everything goes down, and where you will experience what it means to be a truly experienced or inexperienced Age player. All of these holds just as true for Age of Mythology as for the rest of the series, and I very much appreciate that the Definitive Edition brings everything the original game offered, and that the devs are promising even more content in future updates and expansions, as it shows that Mythology Definitive Edition is not the end of this saga, but just the beginning of at least a few months or years of a new adventure in this old made young universe. And more than just being fun, it shows that the devs care about its community, not just in terms of providing patches and fixes, but entirely new content you've never seen before. And I think that's partially why these Definitive Edition versions have been so successful, why they deserve the praise they've been given, and why I recommend Age of Mythology. Let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments, and make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and follow my link below to find awesome discounts for your next game on Instant Gaming. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!